Good afternoon. I would like to warmly welcome you to the Can-Do Innovation Summit for the Advanced Manufacturing Panel Q&A session focused on the journey to digitisation. I'm Chris Dungey, the Research Director of the National Manufacturing Institute of Scotland, and I'm your chair today. Before we introduce the panel, I would like to provide some overarching context to this session and what to expect. The Can-Do Innovation Summit aims to explore how businesses can build sustainable growth and resilience after the global impact of COVID-19. The summit has a focus on 5 themes, of which during this particular session, we will be exploring how the advanced manufacturing and digitalisation theme can provide insights and opportunities to support this agenda. So I don't need to highlight that COVID-19 has had a significant impact and deep impact clearly on both society and industry on a global scale. The implications are yet to be fully realised, particularly within a manufacturing context. The fundamental changes are underway and new ways of working are clearly evolving and new opportunities are emerging. For example, we all witnessed global supply chain disruptions to some everyday products and directly felt the effects on a day-to-day basis, highlighting how fragile our supply chain networks are. Also, most of us have had to swiftly adopt and continue to do so, of course, to create an effective virtual home office environment and deal with both technical challenges and new modes of interacting with colleagues. As such, the use of digital capabilities, tools and services has never been more important. Many organisations are expediting their digital journey, and today I would like to offer a warm welcome to our panellists who will shed insights on how digital capabilities can support and transform industry within the sustainable advanced manufacturing context. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the panel session, which is focused on the journey to digitalisation within a manufacturing context. It will be around about 30 minutes of questions directed at our panellists, followed by a live Q&A session. So I'm privileged to welcome our industrial panellists. So firstly, warm welcome to you all. Iona, would you like to give you a brief overview of yourself, please?
Yes, thanks, Chris, and it's great to be involved. So yeah, my name's Iona. I am the marketing manager at SICCAR. So SICCAR offer a platform for secure sharing of sensitive data, and this sharing is normally to do with externally sharing information across networks of organisations. So in a supply chain setting, that could be a network of supply chains, and it allows organisations to share potentially commercially sensitive information across supply chains and allow for a sort of complete traceability of an entire supply chain and, you know, all the efficiencies and collaboration that can bring. So yeah, it's great to be involved and talk about the
yeah. Thank you, Iona, for that introduction. Really appreciate that, and welcome to the panel. Moving over to Martin, please.
Hi, I'm Martin Welsh. I'm Managing Director of Booth Welsh. We're an engineering services business with a strong focus on digitalisation and making our clients and our solutions digitally ready.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Martin, and welcome to the panel today. And of course, Tim, over to you.
Thanks then, Chris. Yeah, it's great to be on the panel today. I'm Tim Bittleston. I'm the Applications Director at BlitzList Smart Factory Systems. We develop enterprise resource planning, product life management and document management systems integrated, and are working on a smart factory exemplar.
Thank you very much, Tim. Warm welcome, of course, to yourself as well. So we'll just move on then to the first question. I'd just like to ask you all this question, but we'll start with Iona in terms of response here, please. So the question is, where do you see the biggest opportunity is for a company to leverage digital technologies within their business? And can you also share any experiences of this? So firstly, over to Iona, please.
Yeah, I think it might be a bit of a typical answer, but I think in terms of collaboration, you know, given that social distancing is now the norm, using and leveraging digital technologies to allow for collaboration with your employees, your colleagues, and also your customers and suppliers and partners. I read that there's a trend in 2021 for anywhere operations. So I think that using digital technologies for better collaboration is where there's a big opportunity for businesses to get involved. And also from a Scottish perspective, digital technologies will allow us to compete on a global scale. So that's a massive opportunity for anyone. Personally, at SICCAR, I sit in the marketing area, so thinking of new ways to try and connect and collaborate with customers, given that we can no longer hold events and no longer hold meetings and things like that. That's definitely been a challenge, but also an opportunity, because it's provided us with new ways of connecting with customers. So yeah, I'd say definitely a lot of thought there.
Brilliant. Thank you, Iona. Thank you for those insights. Over to you, Martin, please.
I think for me, the main areas of focus for us to get benefit and leveraging digital technologies around productivity gain, for example. So, there are some big numbers thrown around. Productivity gains of up to 30% is one that I've heard, which is clearly aspirational.
Absolutely.
But, if we can get digital technology right, then there are definitely gains to be had in every business. And, so productivity gain, reducing waste, again, by more efficient manufacturing. We've certainly seen a reduction in our carbon footprint, so there's an impact on reducing our environmental footprint. And then managing the skills challenge, upskilling people and replacing what would be normally repetitive tasks with more fulfilling roles, using cobots, for example. One example of the reducing the carbon footprint, we do a lot of systems testing, and normally we host clients in our offices, and they can come from all over. They can come from Australia, Singapore, Europe, or the UK, but what we've been able to do during the last 10 months is actually quite comprehensively test our systems using remote technology.
Martin, that's some excellent insights there, particularly in, I guess, novel approaches on the environmental aspects and virtual testing as well. So that'd be interesting to follow those up in the Q&A session, I dare say. There'll be many questions in that arena. Thank you very much for that. Tim, over to you.
Yeah, I think one of the areas that we've been very interested in is that there is perhaps quite good understanding on the manufacturing shop floor of lean principles, waste, reducing waste, etc. Digital gives us an opportunity to take some of this manufacturing methods and systems and take them into the back office. We're very interested in lower cost compliance and back office automation, where we can reduce paperwork, we can reduce people sitting at PCs. Anything that you're doing at a PC, at a computer, can potentially be done by a program to get those people off administrative tasks and into productive roles, to free people up for retraining in digital technologies. I think back office automation and lower cost and reduced cost compliance and traceability is a key area for us.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Tim, for that question. Okay, moving on swiftly. So in terms of the next question I'd like to ask, and I'll pitch this into Martin first. So COVID clearly has been highly impactful here, but it's brought an unprecedented transition to remote working and behavioural changes, of course. And they've been facilitated by digital technology that are beneficial also to sustainability. So what are your businesses doing to embed such changes and ensure behaviours don't just actually revert back to the way they used to be? So I think there's some, there's massive impact, there's change. How do we actually embed and embrace that change going forward? So first and foremost, over to you, Martin.
I think for us, everybody was faced with the challenge of having to work remotely, initially for a period of 3 weeks, which, as we know, quickly became a period of 10 months. Technology, I think, has saved the day for most businesses, and anybody who was ready for the change that came along by adopting, as an early adopter, adopting digital technology, I think was in a better place in the early stages. And I think now that we have all been used to remote working and flexible working, there's probably not many organizations that will go backwards here. I think the technology is here to stay. What we have done in the meantime is we have developed policies, maybe less formal than they would have been prior to the COVID pandemic, but we have now accepted that remote and flexible working is a normal part of our business and will be when we go forward, even beyond the vaccine. I think people's opportunity now to have a better work-life balance is definitely there.
Very well said, Martin. Very well said indeed. And I like what you said there. Technology saved the day. Maybe that could be the slogan for the Q&A session, maybe. So thank you very much for that. Moving on swiftly to Tim, please.
Yeah, I think there was a greater appreciation of the things that we'd already been looking to do with design collaboration and being able to work online. I think getting people out of the office and then them realizing that they had access to all of this does make people think about their work-life balance. I don't think that there's much risk of it going back to the way it was. I think a lot of people have learned a lot of things about the technologies that are available to them. And indeed, a lot of the companies supplying those technologies, the technology we're using today to do this, for example, have become far better for the enormous customer base that they've just been given. I don't think there's much fear of it rolling back. I think we'll have all learned something from this.
Okay, Tim, thank you very much. Over to you, Iona.
Yeah, it's been pretty mad to see potentially organisations that were reluctant to move to that anywhere working model doing so or being forced to do so. Personally, working from home has allowed more time to focus on health and stuff like that, which is another benefit. Mm-hmm. And actually, as a recent graduate, I do believe that the new workforce just expects companies to offer that anywhere working model. And I think if an organization isn't, then they're definitely, you're potentially limiting your talent pool a bit and not attracting the best talent. So that's something to bear in mind. SICCAR have moved to a fully remote model. So we're now a fully remote company, and we're in the process of recruiting. So it's just allowed us to it's allowed us way more talent and finding the right person for the job globally rather than nationally. So it's only positive things.
Yeah, that's really useful, interesting insights there, particularly from the graduate context, new people into the work environment, and also the disparate working models, I guess, we're coming towards in terms of how they operate, maybe more akin to what the IT companies traditionally do. How does that evolve in the manufacturing context? So again, I think some great opportunities for further debate in the Q&A session. So that's been great. So we'll move on to the next question, if that's okay. And Tim, I'll direct this one directly towards yourself first. So in light of the current pandemic, some would say transformation and digital adoption is more important than ever. There are also many companies struggling to survive through the downturn. So what would your advice be around approaching new technology adoption in such an uncertain landscape?
I think companies need to look at the digital technologies that are available now and ask themselves, where do these things fit into our organization? There needs to be a good review of the things that are being done that are available, and an understanding that these things are tools, and that just like any manufacturing tool that you've got, any capital investment that you might make, you need to find the areas where these things will be effective before you try and deploy them. You don't want to try and deploy something across the entire organization simultaneously. You don't need the change management of that. You really want to look for focus on key areas where technology can drive down waste, drive down costs, and increase efficiency in those areas. And that could be any part of the business. You need to open your mind to the possibilities there. And I think that companies are going to need to understand that they're going to really start to rely on having internal resources capable of developing solutions for their own problems, and that reliance on very large technology companies for systems and technology can be extremely confusing, and that companies really ought to strategize around new skills, bringing in skills to make use of digital technologies from a fundamental level.
Brilliant, Tim. Very good answer. Thank you very much for that. Iona, over to you.
Yeah, thinking about this question, what I would say is that digital transformation is quite a scary almost term, and it doesn't actually need to be as radical as it sounds. So I actually did my dissertation research around attitudes towards technology adoption, and that was one of the things that came out of it. In fact, digital transformation can be a lot of incremental steps, so you don't need to be changing your entire supply chain or doing a massive systems migration or anything like that, especially during these times. Actually, digitizing a simple paper-based process or creating efficiencies in one area of a business is actually, I believe, probably more effective than doing some wide-scale change. So that's what I would say. That'd be my sort of advice for digital transformation during a pandemic.
Thank you very much, Iona. And over to you, Martin.
I think Iona and Tim make good points there. To take Iona's last point there, the idea of starting small and focusing one plant area, for example, or a pilot project, I think is really important, so that people do get on board this idea that people people support what they help to create. So make sure that you take the high road and not the low road. Don't just go straight for the technology, but involve your people. I think it's really important that the people embrace the technology, and by embedding them in the process and getting the culture to change slightly, I think you'll go a lot further with what is quite a low spend now. The cost of this technology has reduced, whilst its effectiveness has certainly increased dramatically.
Thank you very much, Martin. Yeah, some really excellent points there. I mean, there's some real good, prudent advice. I think just things reflecting on the conversation just very briefly. You know, pace of change is really important. The fact that, you know, small focus maybe to start with. Change management, the culture around that, skills agenda as well, accessibility of technology, as you rightly pointed out, Martin. It's a lot more accessible these days. How do you then, what does that mean for your particular manufacturing context? So some really good insights there. Again, food for thought for the Q&A session. Thank you very much for kind of the round questions that were around the panel. So what I'd like to do now is just drop onto a few individual questions. We've got a few minutes left. So Tim, first off, this is obviously just for yourself, Tim, to answer this one. So how can SMEs keep up with the pace of digital technology adoption and investing in tech that will be superseded within a few years?
Well, although this is a tall order and I understand the skills challenges, I think organisations should all be now developing their fundamental capabilities in digital. Application of technologies new to an organisation in the manufacturing environment is really, it's an engineering task. And if your engineers do not understand the fundamental principles behind the technologies you employ, your organisation will be at the mercy of large software providers who are only really looking to profit from your lack of understanding. The price of hardware has become so low, and the tools necessary to tailor that hardware to specific tasks, in many cases, are free to the people that have the skills to use the technology. And I think, you know, talking about pace of change, at a fundamental level, digital technologies are perhaps not moving as fast as it looks. There's enormous activity in the market with new products being made available to solve all your problems. You know, there's new things every day. But these are all built on the same fundamental principles. If you ask any coder, you know, the C programming language has been about since, what, 1973. Yeah. It's still completely relevant, as is all the networking technology derived from research conducted in the 60s and 70s. These things are getting faster, which make your processes better if you've put them in. I don't believe that there's been anything other than a human barrier to sort of general digitalization and transformation of manufacturing industry using digitalization since perhaps even the late 1980s, and that some good work was done in the 1980s toward this goal, which perhaps was interrupted by online marketing, online shops and all that, sucking in all the coding resources away from industry as a whole. But I think understanding how something might reduce waste, increase throughput at a constraint in your business, increase your quality, or otherwise improve your customer experience. If you can understand what you want to employ at a fundamental level, how does it work, how does it do this, why is it the right solution for that specific problem, then these technologies can be applied in the same way as tooling and fixtures and all the other things that we might come to rely on in a manufacturing environment to increase throughput and efficiency. So I think worrying about how fast it's moving is more of an excuse than anything else, and that really you should look at the tools we have now, how you might apply them, and just imagine that all of the technology improving is going to make those solutions work better for you. You might not even need to rethink them, they might just get faster on their own. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about the pace of change and get on with making your processes more efficient using the tools that are available.
Okay, Tim, thank you. I guess just to explore that a bit further, have you got any examples from where you currently are or organisations you work with about this particular context, how they've approached understanding the technology landscape and making investments, and any concerns that they may have had or any issues that may have arisen? Have you got any examples you might like to share in that particular?
Well, I mean, we are, you know, our fundamental example is our own learning over the last 20 years about how you go about putting digital technologies into manufacturing companies. I think the biggest mistakes we've made have been around the idea that somehow all of these things had to happen at once and that nothing happens until the entire solution's ready. And that really need to focus on one area where something's going to help you out. Is somebody doing something all the time? And find constraints. Theory of constraints is really important in a manufacturing business. And you need to look at the constraints and understand how digital might be able to alleviate those constraints. It's those areas where you're bottlenecking that are important in any business, and chasing around those things, looking to see what technology needs to be applied. It could be any technology. If digital is the technology to apply in that area, then make a beeline for it and get it done. And that, just to get anything done in an area that is a constraint will always help your business, regardless of the technology that you're using. If it's digital, don't let that be a barrier. If it's not digital, don't try and use digital. Just make sure you're employing the right technology for the job, and look for your constraints and put your effort into alleviating those constraints and bottlenecks. Yep.
Yes, okay. Thank you for that further, kind of comments there. And I guess one thing, just picking up on that very briefly, Tim's about that, I guess, granular approach. It's not about the full system. It will take you probably a long time, depending on what it is, of course, to get there. So what you want to do is chunk it, I guess, and make sure you get wins, maybe quick wins along the way, which resonates with some of the other comments that were made earlier on during the session. So thank you very much for those comments, Tim. Just moving on then to Martin. So a question for yourself, Martin. In your opinion, what critical support do businesses need to help adopt digital transformation?
I think at the moment, most businesses will be looking for fast-track funding. I mean, I think the opportunity to get funding just now is quite a complex landscape out there just now. Anybody who's tried to apply or collaborate to get the funding, I think you'll find that there's a lot of complexity in getting that type of funding. I think that needs to be simplified.
Yes.
But I think the other thing is, where the companies easily learn about digital technology, I think that, the support that we need out there just now is about developing digital skills, and that is from the factory floor right through to, really clever technology. So I think fast-tracked funding and also digital skills is two key areas. I do think that the industry steering groups have got a great role to play here, whether it be organisations like SEED, the IET, the EIC. There's loads of, everybody tends to be doing their own thing just now, but I think a bit more collaboration in that space would definitely help. And that would support businesses going forward too. And the other thing is, I think people need to get their hands on this technology. So the idea of having technology demonstration centres, I think is really exciting. And I know that universities and also NMIS and CPI and AFRC, they're all working on this approach, and hopefully the future DPMC focusing on process technologies is coming along. And that'll allow people to actually get their hands on the technology and probably reduce a bit of the fear that we see when people start mentioning things like digital transformation. And I think also the idea of taking more action, so give them a bit of support to do small projects that might fail fast, but will definitely learn a lot from that type of approach. So those would be my suggestions for where we need critical support at the moment to help business move forward.
Thank you for that, Martin. It's a complex landscape. I think that's probably part of the perception of digital transformation. How do we do this, depending on where you're starting from? Particularly just picking up a few things you mentioned about funding. It is a complex landscape. It's an evolving landscape as well. So that's a key area, I think, probably for a Q&A session about what funding is right in this particular environment. Is it a quick win type of funding pot? Yeah. Or is it a grand challenge around digital, several £1 million type approach? Or is it something in between, or is it everything in between? So I think that's quite important to explore. What is an appropriate funding mechanism in that kind of environment? And also just touch on your point about the demonstrators or digital testbed demonstrators within the kind of Scottish university landscape and other innovation centres landscape, and of course the National Manufacturing Institute of Scotland. So there is substantial amount of development activities and demonstrators being developed in that environment. So again, we could pick that up in the Q&A session to understand what's going on in that space, and also how industry can get involved and help inform that particular agenda. And of course the skills piece as well, Martin. It's quite interesting, as you said. There's many different facets to this, from shop floor, back office, senior management, as it were, in terms of skills that are relevant in those kind of environments. So again, that skills piece probably needs to be developed a bit further in terms of what is appropriate in different parts of organisations to make it work effectively going forward. So thank you very much, Martin, for those insights. So I'll just move on to Iona for the third question, as it were, part of this individual question aspect. So Iona, distributed ledger technology is largely associated with cryptocurrencies. However, there are some clear use cases in manufacturing. So how would manufacturers go about starting to understand and use DLT technology? And is there an easy and practical way to integrate DLT into current practices? So it's all about DLT, which I think you'll resonate with yourself.
Yes, yeah. Well, it's interesting picking up from Martin's points around proof of concepts, and I guess that's a place to start in terms of the DLT world. But we like to think about distributed ledger technology or blockchain as a foundation for joining up supply chains. So obviously it's a technology that allows multiple parties, multiple organizations to contribute data in a secure and confidential way. And the fact that it's tamper-proof and provides an audit trail ticks a lot of boxes. So in terms of getting started, it really depends on the use case and the supply chain operations that you're thinking about. But actually proving the concept shouldn't be terribly difficult. So our platform actually allows organizations to create processes, map out processes, the organizations involved and the steps involved, and sort of quickly and easily create a prototype and test that out. Another thing about blockchain DLT, I think that might be a bit confusing, is that, you know, does it work within existing environments and within existing systems? So that's something that we've been working hard on in regards to allowing organizations to take that first step with DLT and integrating it in current supply chain operations. So it sort of sits over supply chain operations and joins up supply chain essentially. So taking that first step and integrating it into current operations isn't as difficult and isn't as daunting.
Okay, thank you for that. And I guess from my point of view, and I guess many people in the audience, I mean, how would you even, what would be the benefits of DLT? I mean, you kind of get the security angle and stuff. Could you go into that just a little bit more detail? Why should we embrace this technology? What do you see as the key benefits?
Well, so using distributed ledger, when you contribute data to distributed ledger platform, it assures that the contributor is who they say they are. It's obviously cryptographically secure. It provides a complete tamper-proof audit trail of the entire supply chain. So talking about supply chain traceability is always talked about when you think about DLT and supply chain. Having that complete view of an entire supply chain from, you know, we did a use case in oats, and it was around getting the oats from the field to, I think it was field to fork, you call it. So having that complete traceability and trusted traceability is really, really powerful, and that's something that we like to talk about a lot in terms of trusting the data that you've got and making sure it's reliable and has integrity.
Okay, so some interesting concepts around DLT, and I guess have you witnessed many manufacturing examples starting to emerge, or was there any trends? Because obviously DLT might more closely associate maybe logistical type setups. How would you approach from a manufacturing, or have you seen a trend in manufacturing regarding this in terms of uptake?
I think the use case that we most recently worked on with the National Manufacturing Institute of Scotland was around digitising a manufacturing record book. So in that scenario, it was hundreds of bits of paper for one sort of high value asset, and streamlining that process with distributed ledger, you know, resulted in lots of efficiency gain and cost savings. So sort of even from a fairly simple use case around digitizing paper-based processes, that's quite a good area and quite a I want to say popular area for DLT. So and it's not as it's a fairly it's a very clear use case, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much. Well, okay, I think we're almost out of time. So I'd like to thank you all for your excellent contributions and insights. There's a lot of food for thought there, I think, in terms of the Q&A session. Obviously, this session was particularly focused on the journey to digitization within a manufacturing context. So I'd now like to move on to the live Q&A session, invite you to the breakout rooms for further debate and discussion. So see you all soon.